All praise, glory, and honor is most certainly due to the Most High, God of the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I want to say peace to you in the name of His Son Jesus. This is your brother Elisha Israel of the household of faith, and I count it truly a blessing each and every single time that I can come before you to preach the word of God, and never count it as a light thing to do so. All right, brothers and sisters, in today's message, I want to deal with the Godhead, if you will. And the reason I want to deal with this is because what inspired this actually is me listening to a Gentile preacher who calls himself an apologetic pastor, and he's coming against mainly what he deems as Hebrew Israelite groups. And he mentioned the Trinity. He said they don't believe in the Trinity. And let me say this. There's no one group per se, and neither is Hebrew Israelite a religion. But nevertheless, certainly you are not in any kind of moral or authoritative position to speak on anything in the Bible. It was not given to you, and anything that you want has to come through the nation of Israel. And Israel, whether you want to like it, dislike it, accept it, or reject it, Israel is a black people that have been scattered into slavery all over this world. They are not the people that are in the land today claiming and professing to be the Yuhadim, the Jews. They are imposters. Neither, again, is the church in Rome, and neither do the so-called Gentiles have it now. You still have to come by this way. Even when you look at the New Covenant, it was made with the same people. Okay? So the quicker you understand that, the better off you'll be. But he was mentioning the Trinity, and so many are taken for a ride with this particular doctrine because they really don't understand the Godhead. See, if you understood the Godhead, it is my belief that you wouldn't fall prey to the false doctrine of the Trinity. There is no Trinity in the Bible. God is not in three persons. You only see two over and over again. But now let's just to show you that, I want to start off in the Bereshith in the very beginning. And it says here in Genesis 1:1, it says, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. Okay, so now we know that word God there is not his name. We know that in Hebrew that the name there is Elohim, and we understand that Elohim can be plural. It can be a word like a family. There could be one family with many members. So here it says in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. We're going to hold our thing in Genesis. I want to go to John, the 1st chapter. In John, the 1st chapter, we find out in this particular gospel just who was in the beginning. And you'll find again there are two, not three. Okay, so now let's pick it up in John 1:1. It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Okay, the same was in the beginning with God. So you have two in the beginning. You have who is referred to as God, and then you have the Word, who is also God. Again, I'm going to read this again. In the beginning was the Word, right? Let's see who the Word is. Let's pick it up in verse 14. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. The Word made flesh is none other than Christ, the Messiah, the Mashiach, who we say in English, Jesus. He said, and we beheld his glory, the glory of the only begotten of the Father. Okay? Who was that? He tells you in John, just only begotten. Again, John the 3rd chapter. He said in verse 16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. So that's what the Father did with the Son. And just for clarification purposes, the flesh, the one that was made flesh, because it said again in John 1 and verse 14, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Let's go to the book of Isaiah. Hold a finger in John 1 and keep your finger in Genesis 1. See, again, when we understand this, we can understand that there is no Trinity. Let's go to the book of Isaiah. In the book of Isaiah, in the 9th chapter, it says something. It says in the 7th chapter, excuse me. it says in verse 14, therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. That means El, which is another word for God. Okay, that's one of his names, El, with us. See, so he was manifested in the flesh. He didn't start with Joseph like a lot of Hebrew Israelites teach. That's inaccurate. If he started with Joseph, you might as well pack it up, pack it in. Do something else. But John 1:1, back to verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. You have two. Who is that? The one they're referring to as God, he is the Father, and the Word, who is also God, is the Son. That's the one that's manifested in the flesh. Then it says something, all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. Okay? So now we can understand what happened here in the beginning with Elohim. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Well, who was in the beginning? You had two. You had the Father and you had the Son. Let's go to the book of Colossians. And we'll pick it up in the first chapter. Again, if we understand that there are always two, we can understand better what's going on. Because it says something in John, I'll just read that again. In John 1:3, I just want to make sure we're clear on this. I want to make it crystal clear. It says, all things were made by him. Who is that referring to? That's referring to the Word. That's referring to Jesus. And without him was not anything made that was made. And we know that again it's referring to Jesus because it said in him was life, and that life was and the life was the light of men. That's Jesus, who was the light of the world. But now here we read it in Colossians where it says giving in verse 12, 1 and 12, Colossians 1 and 12, giving thanks unto the Father which hath made us meet or fit to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light, who hath delivered us from the power of darkness, and have translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son, in whom we, keep that in mind, in whom we have redemption through his blood, even the forgiveness of sins, who is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature. Okay, Jesus Christ, the first fruits that are Christ when? At his coming. It said, for by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things were created by him and for him. And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. Let's go to the book of Hebrews and see what the author of Hebrews had to say concerning the matter. This is Hebrews 1. It says in verse 1, God, who at sundry times and in divers manners spake in time past unto the fathers by the prophets, hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Son, whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds. So now